very pleased to welcome everyone to the meeting.
Hello everyone, I'm Diane Best, the leaseholder you elected to represent you on the Housing Scrutiny Committee. I'm very pleased to introduce Samantha Shimon, our Assistant Director for Housing and Homelessness, who is going to start our meeting by giving us an update and information about the fire safety policy that's been reviewed recently.
Thank you, Stan and Diane. So I've got a short presentation which I will share in just a moment, but just want to say hello to everybody. I did attend this meeting last year, but I was very, very new in post at the time. But yeah, it's a real, I'm really pleased to be back here, and I'm going to be talking to you about the policy that was reviewed, and it was taken through our Housing Scrutiny Committee in September and approved. So bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. I won't be able to see whether there's any hands up once I share my screen. So Carol, if you wouldn't mind letting me know if we've got any questions, but there is time for questions at the end as well. Sorry, this decided to be really slow for me to share my screen. Right, can you all see that now? Lovely, thank you. So wanted to talk to you about the fire safety in communal areas policy, which has gone through for 2024. And firstly, I'd just like to talk a little bit about our original policy that we had and where that policy came from. So it was put together on the back of the tragic fire that happened at Grenfell Tower. There's obviously been the inquiry that has recently released their reports. And just to give you some perspective on this policy and why it is so important, I've got a few quotes that have come from survivors of that fire that I just want to talk you through and why this policy is so important. So Antonio Roncoleto was a resident of flat 72 on the 10th floor. And in his witness statement, he's described, "I then went towards my front door. It was warm to touch. Normally the lights from the landing shine through the glass panels, but I could only see darkness. I opened the door a few inches and very, very thick smoke came billowing in and hit me in the face. It was pitch black. My eyes were stinging. I was almost crying. It was impossible to breathe. The entire landing was full of smoke and I could not see anything. The smoke was very, very smelly and hot. It was suffocating." Samuel Daniels, who was further up, he was on the 16th floor, said the smoke was so thick that I could not see anything. I had to feel my way around. There was thick black smoke everywhere. And Clarita, who was also on the 10th floor, said, "I would describe the conditions in the communal landing outside my flat as pitch black. I could see nothing at all. I was able to feel my way through the communal landing to get to that door. I felt my throat was suffocating as I was trying to escape. It was very challenging to get through and very disorientating." So that just describes some of why it is so important for our communal escape routes to be clear of all obstacles, because, if we have a fire that does spread into the corridor, it is really important that people can get out. There aren't any trip hazards at all because of this type of situation. So also to talk to you a little bit about the legislation around fire safety. So the regulatory reform order in 2005 does clearly state that where necessary in order to safeguard the safety of relevant persons, the responsible person, which is the council as the building owner and freeholder, must ensure that routes to emergency exits from premises and the exits themselves are kept clear at all times. And then the Building Safety Act that came in 2022, which again was as a result of the Grenfell Tower fire, has clearly stated that in residential buildings with 2 or more domestic premises, residents must be provided with information on the risks from fire and the fire safety measures provided to keep them safe. So we did have an existing policy, which I think was locally known as sort of the zero tolerance policy. But actually, when we reviewed this, it didn't meet those legislations. There was quite a lot of different categories within that around whether something in a communal area was immediate priority or whether it was low priority, which actually had a time scale of 6 months. For it being removed is obviously not acceptable. It doesn't meet the legislation. I think it was confusing as well for residents with all of the different categories and time scales. So as part of needing to review it to ensure it met legislation, we were also able to update all of those categories. So we have got the new policy in place. It obviously have had a name change to better reflect its purpose and what it's there to do. And what we have looked to do is reduce those categories. So we now have 2 categories. So we have items that pose a significant risk removed within 24 hours. So that's anything, you know, sometimes we have it where people may have left flammable items, you know, a can of paint, something like that in a communal area. Anything like that that is a significant risk will be removed within 24 hours. Other items will be removed within 5 working days. So that just means, you know, we will work with residents at all times. So if somebody has accidentally left something in a communal area, we will look to work with residents to ensure, you know, to get them to remove it. But where we're unable to do so, we will remove those items and dispose of them where they're things like rubbish, or we will look to, depending on the situation and what the item is, we may look to store. The other thing we've been really explicit about is that we cannot have any items in hallways, and that even includes doormats. A doormat in a pitch black smoke-filled corridor is a trip hazard. Unfortunately, we just can't have them in the communal side of the hallway. People can have them in their own homes, in the hallways on their side. It's just in the communal side that we can't have them, I'm afraid. So those are the main updates that we've done to the policy. We do have obviously the Jamie and the team that he works with are the ones that are working through this policy. They're working with residents, they're continuing to do so. And we're looking at, you know, alternatives, storage areas. So I know through our environmental improvement scheme, they've sort of fitted bike racks in some areas or mobility scooter stores in others, so that we can work with residents to ensure that the corridors are kept clear. So does anybody have any questions at all? Martin.
Yes, good afternoon there. The thing with this policy, it seems to be one size fits all approach. Yeah, where obviously there's different types of accommodation, different types of premises, each with their, you know, appropriate different set of requirements. So, you know, is it, you know, a lot of, for instance, this where I am, you know, there's no covered, there's a covered staircase, it's not internal, you know, and it's exposed to the outside. It's only 1 story high, you know, it's a 2-story building, it's not 10 stories high. So, you know, the blanket approach, you know, it doesn't necessarily work in all situations.
So unfortunately, Martin, the blanket approach is there from the legislation. So the legislation is very clear that all exit routes have to be kept clear. So whether that is an external staircase or an internal covered one, the legislation is really clear. So we are having to take this approach to ensure that we meet legislation.
Right, okay, that's one aspect. The other question was, I had a meeting with the building control officer yesterday on the Fyson Road estate, and considerable number of staircases, which are the means of escape from all the flats, have bowing ceilings, which are part of the fire compartmentation, which has been reported to the council for over the last decade. And there's basically, the compartmentation itself is not, will not perform in a fire, but no work whatsoever has been done with that at all. I know that's not to do with keeping, the actual passageways clear, but it's still a considerable factor in terms of fire safety. What is going to be done about that?
So are they external staircases on that
Well,
estate?
they're all covered staircases.
They're
so
all
they're
covered.
not internal. They're roofed, but they are open to the elements. I mean, to the, to the outside air, as it were. But basically, when the asbestos paneling was removed back in 2008, the incorrect fireboard ceilings were installed, and they've failed on numerous locations. This has been reported to the council, as I said, for over the last decade. No action has been taken apart from my particular staircase, because I had the contractor come back and take it all down and put back the correct paneling, which I would have thought would have been implemented across the whole estate, but it hasn't been.
Will, do you know more information on this?
Yes, that might be useful. I had an email at the beginning of this week from Estates and Facilities to say that there's they were contacting me to locate a suitable storage area, because Fosters have been appointed to do some ceiling replacement program on that estate. So I just heard about that this week. I don't know exactly when it started, but it sounds like that is now in hand.
Thank you, Will. Carol, I don't know if it's possible for you to find out from Will Barfield, perhaps when that work will be commencing, so that you could feed that back to Martin.
Yes, I will do.
Lovely. Yeah. Thanks, Carol. Any other questions at all on the fire safety policy? No? Okay, I shall hand you back over to Stan. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so the next item on the agenda was regarding grounds maintenance. Unfortunately, Richard Warman, who's the Streets and Open Spaces team leader, wasn't able to make the meeting today. And Will Beavitt is here to perhaps give us some update on the grounds maintenance.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the invite. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Will Beavitt, the Senior Estate Services Officer, and our team is split into two, me generally looking after monitoring sites on the south of the city, and my colleague Vishnu monitors the north. I think Vishnu's here, if he wants to say hello.
Hi, hello everyone, my name is Vishnu. I look after maintenance contracts, particularly in the north side of the city.
So the main estate services contracts that we're looking after are monitoring is the ground maintenance, the street cleansing, window cleaning and building cleaning. And then we've got our caretakers, and then the team that Samantha was referring to, Jamie, who's looking after monitoring the communal areas for fire safety. So yeah, I'm sorry Richard's not here today. He's our contract manager in Streets and Open Spaces, but I can give you an outline of the annual programme, which is typically from, we try to get our first grass cut started by Easter, and generally if we've had a cut by Easter, we're off to a good start. If it's delayed for any reason, then the grass is getting long by then and it can be a mess. So we try to get them to started for us by Easter. 12 cuts a year typically. I mean, this year has it's unheard of, but the grass cuttings carried on into November because of the warm weather we've had. At the end of grass cutting, that misses out the bird nesting season, so the team can move on to shrub bed maintenance, particularly hard cut of all the buddleias and our big shrubs around the city. And then when they've completed that, they typically move on to leafing around the city. And that's and the street cleansing, sweeping our hard standing car parks and the paths around the estate. And then before grass cutting starts again after that, we look to replant and just tidying up our shrub beds in more detail. So I think if the best thing is if any leaseholders have got particular areas that you'd like Vishnu and I to look at and to raise with the contractors, then we can go away and meet them, and then we can come back to you via Carol and let you know the answers we've got from that team.
Okay, thanks, Will. We've had a question in the chat. Do your team have responsibility for, does the open spaces have responsibility for the trees on the estates? I think they're slightly different, aren't they?
So if in general, trees around the estate, particularly at the fronts of the estate and on the public highways, are managed by a tree team. So we liaise with them quite a lot. And all trees are on a 7-year maintenance programme. They're all plotted on a GIS map. So we can see when they've had their maintenance, and the tree team know when there's the next bit of work's due to be done. There are some trees that we look after and we procure the works on using the same contractors generally that the tree team use, and they tend to be ones around the back of flats in more sort of allocated gardens that aren't open access to the public and on the highway. So there are some that we look after. Can you tell me the estate, and I could have a look?
Bermuda Road estate, by the
Okay.
looks of it, around the car park.
So I've got those big ones, big trees there. They're sort of considered public realm, and that's our tree team, which is headed up by Matthew McGrath. So Vishnu can definitely contact the tree team if they're causing an issue.
Okay, Martin's also queried fly tipping in presumably rubbish bins, particularly Russell Court.
Russell Court's we can have a look at that. I'm afraid Russell Court is a problem area with there. Feels like every week there's incidents there. Russell Court, we're trying to get a bicycle store for each block of flats at the moment as well, so we can move some of the cycles off the communal area. But okay, I'll make a note of that so we can look at that. Thank you.
Okay, we've got another question for Surrender. Did you want to ask a question?
Hi, yes, I have a question regarding when people have vegetation on their front garden, it usually grows out to the footpath, especially on Drayton Road where I live. I've seen, and when my kids walk on the footpath, there are thorny branches from roses or other such plants that they get stuck with. So is this responsibility lies with the homeowner or with the council?
I would say, I think you said Drayton Road, that's it's their tenants' responsibilities, those front gardens, if they're causing an obstruction. But something we can visit the flats and also with the housing officer, and we can let the residents know and just ask them politely to get that back in order so it's not causing an obstruction for you. So that's Drayton Road.
Drayton Road. And similar is the situation from Drayton Road to enter into the park, the recreation park ground.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make a note of all of those areas and pass them on, Will, won't we?
Yeah.
Diane, have you got a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Will. I think in view of the fact that as the leaseholder representative, I've had considerable contact from leaseholders over the past year about what they have perceived to be a deterioration in the standard. I think taking it forward positively, I think it would be very helpful if they could have information about how to report their concerns. It's not necessarily appropriate for leaseholders to go directly to Carol, as I know that there is another way of reporting these issues. But the concern out there, particularly amongst leaseholders and tenants, is what's perceived to be a deterioration in the standard.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, definitely agree. And if reports can go straight to the Streets and Open Spaces team, so we can share that afterwards, the best way. But there is, I can say now, there are web forms which are really useful for each areas, and they go straight through to Streets and Open Spaces and filter out to the relevant teams. Yeah, so the more logs we can get on it, that would be really helpful.
Perhaps
Okay,
Carol could put that information in the minutes.
Yes, I will do. Thank you, Diane. Martin, did you have a question? Martin Barras.
Yes, hi. I just want to add to what Diane said. I wouldn't classify it as a perception of deterioration. There has been a deterioration of standard. I don't know about 12 cuts a year for the grass cutting. I can only recall about 3. The actual, the bushes, hedgerows, everything has just been left to turn into a jungle, basically. So I would question what we're actually being invoiced for from that part of the service charge.
Okay, Martin. Yeah, we'll take that back.
Carol, is Carol Chapman here? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
we can hear you.
I've got a question about tree cutting again. We haven't had our trees trimmed round here at Fulburnell Drift for some time. The ones at the back and the ones at the front, especially the ones at the front, are actually going in the gutters of the flat. So I'm just wondering when they're due for a trim.
Okay, we'll pass the question on to the tree team, won't we, Will?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carol. Okay. Oh, Alex.
Hi,
Pass.
thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, just in relation to that, I was wondering whose
Yeah.
responsibility it was to actually clean gutters on leasehold properties, whether it's the freeholder or the leaseholder.
So if it's a structural repair, so clearing the gutters is the council's responsibility. In some areas where there's issues with trees, they can be on a programme, so they're done on a yearly basis. Where there's no issues with trees, they tend to be done when we do a repair and paint contract. So every 5 to 7 years when we're around painting, they would clear the gutters out at the same time. So if you've got a problem with overflowing gutters, best to report it to our customer service centre as you would any other communal repair. And if it's on the programme to be dealt with, they'll advise you if it's due to be done or they'll raise an order.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you very much, Will and Vishnu, for coming along today. And if there's any other questions regarding grounds maintenance, I'll pass them back to you or any other the contracting services.
Okay,
thank you
very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm now going to hand over to Diane Best, who's going to give us an update on the Housing Scrutiny Committee. Thanks, Diane.
Hello, everyone, again. Just to give you a very brief overview of the sort of things that happen and are discussed at the Housing Scrutiny Committee. We've had, since our last meeting last November, the committee has met in January, March, June and September. In June, the newly elected tenant and leaseholder representatives started their 4-year cycle at the June meeting. The January meeting concentrates on the budget setting report, which includes the service charges that are going to be apportioned to leaseholders and tenants in flats and residents in shelter scheme. So that part of the budget is really the bit that's relevant to leaseholders because it sets the service charges. It also sets the individual charges for leaseholders that want a copy of the lease, things like that. We get a compliance report at every meeting, which outlines the council's statutory duties in tenanted properties for gas safety, electrical safety, and so on. But there is now a section of that report that is relevant to leaseholders because it deals with statistics and information about the damp condensation and mould issues. There is a phone number and a email address that both tenants and leaseholders can contact, and Carol will put these in the minutes of the meeting. From the point of view of leaseholders, the council can consider your report, they can advise you as to action and so on, and I think that that is a very positive move for leaseholders. The executive councillor makes the final decisions on the agenda items following the discussion and voting by members of the committee. One of the things that was approved in the last cycle of meetings is the procurement by tender of the planned maintenance contractor, which is currently held by Foster's and which expires in September 2025, and leaseholders will be kept fully informed of that process through the Section 20 legislation. There has also been a review of garage charging policy that may affect some leaseholders that rent council garages and parking spaces. And if that applies to you, you will be kept informed. At every meeting, we've had an update on the new build council house delivery, and the executive councillor, following debate, has had to make some very challenging decisions about redevelopment in Eakin Road and Davy Road. It's a very challenging situation for her to have to make decisions about, but it's always taken into consideration following extensive debates at the committee meeting. So it's not an easy decision, but it's been decided to redevelop Eakin Road and Davy Road. We also got the executive councillor's approval for the fire safety policy that Samantha has given us a very excellent briefing on, which I think is very helpful. Over the year, I've been very pleased to receive contacts from leaseholders through the HSC residents email address, and please keep doing that, and Carol will put that email address in the minutes. Anyone that doesn't have access to the internet and email can also leave a message for me, either at resident involvement or at leasehold services. I'm very pleased to answer any questions, but I may have to, if they're technical or difficult, I may have to refer them on to the appropriate officer to get answers for you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Diane. Does anyone have any questions for Diane today? No, I don't think there's any come up. We was due to have Kate Grigg here to talk about resident involvement as the next item, but unfortunately she wasn't in today, so we'll have to put that forward to the next meeting. But I mean, we are very lucky to have Diane as the leaseholder representative. I've done leasehold services for 16 years now, and I think, Diane, you've been the leaseholder representative throughout that time. So Diane has built up a lot of knowledge on leasehold issues, and she represents you at committee. So thank you, Diane, for continuing your work and carrying on another 4 years from this year. So we'll move on to an item that Diane specifically asked to be put on the agenda for us to update you about what's called the Leasehold Reform and Freehold Reform Act 2024 that you might have seen in the news. And so I'll just share my screen if that's okay. Can you see that okay? Just a nod from Diane would be great. Okay. So the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act received royal assent on the 24th of May this year. So the Conservative government put through the bill, they fast-tracked it prior to the general election. And the Act applies for England and Wales, and its intention was to improve consumer choice and fairness in leasehold and to crack down on unfair practices in leasehold. That was the aim of the Act. So what's happening and when? So the aims of the Act is to strengthen leaseholders' rights. So firstly, to make it cheaper and easier for leaseholders in houses and flats to extend their lease and to buy their freehold. Secondly, to increase the standard lease extension term to 990 years. It's currently 90, with a ground rent reduced to a peppercorn rent, i.e. 0, on payment of the premium. The third big change was to the qualifying criteria for leaseholders to extend their lease. So at the moment, you have to be owned the property for 2 years. So it's likely that that is going to change, but we haven't had any details of yet. And a ban on the granting of new leasehold houses, which I think most people will be aware there's been an issue with leasehold houses and ground rents that go up and up and up. So that was the aims of the Act. And the improving transparency. So the intention is to give leaseholders more rights to request information about their service charges, to look at the administration charges that freeholders can charge, and buildings insurance commissions that freeholders might take, and to ensure that property sales information is provided in a timely manner. So if you was to sell your property, we provide the information to your solicitors, and we currently do that in 10 days, but obviously other freeholders may not be so quick to do so. So that was the intentions on the transparency. So when will all leaseholders benefit from this? So the majority of the provisions are not yet enforced. So although it's received royal assent, when it comes into effect, we don't actually know yet. The Conservatives were intending to put it in during 2025, 2026. The Labour government are obviously committed, and they've published a draft legislation for leasehold and common hold reform, and they intend to put out what the details of the act will be. Again, it says during the 2024-2025 parliamentary session, but we haven't received further details of that. So that just gives a little bit of background. So when and why should you extend your lease? Well, properties were sold under the right to buy. Originally, 1980 Housing Act came in, and everybody at that time was granted an 125-year lease. The issue of lease extensions becomes an issue the nearer you get to 80 years. So obviously we're 45 years on from the very first leases. We're getting down in Cambridge to certainly some getting near 80 years. The problem with leases of less than 80 years is they're very difficult to mortgage. So that is why it becomes an issue. And then the premium that you have to pay currently to extend a lease on a sub 80-year lease becomes a lot higher. So under the current system, we're saying to leaseholders, you know, at the moment you can still apply for the 90-year that you can currently get. The leaseholder themselves have to serve a notice on the council that they wish to extend their lease. It's called a Section 42 notice that your solicitors would serve. And then you have to offer what price you intend to pay for the premium, which is based on the cost of your, or the value of your current leasehold property. So in Cambridge, the premiums are averaging around £5,000. I can't say an actual amount. It can vary between, say, £3,000 for a smaller flat. I've seen some up nearer £8,000-9,000 for some flats. And then our admin fees, which is the valuation costs, and our solicitors' fees currently come out about £2,000 on top of that. So that's just to give you an indication. A lot of people are hanging on and waiting to see what's going to happen as a result of the legislation. And obviously, unless you're thinking of selling within the next couple of years, then that's probably what we're advising. But you can check on the government website and the lease website. And as soon as we have any information, we will update our lease extension leaflet and obviously start publicising that in Open Door. So that's all I can add on the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? Okay. All right. So we'll move along to the next item on the agenda, which is obviously the questions and answers. Does anyone want to go first and ask a question, or is there anything in the chat? Megan, did you want to have a look at the chat for me, please?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye. So we have one question from: when you have had work done on an estate where you are the leaseholder and responsible for some of these costs, but do not believe the costs are reasonable, how can you have it looked into? And that's from Kat.
Okay, thanks, Kat. So if you've had Section 20's planned work carried out, you obviously can write into us and ask for a breakdown, and we will get a breakdown from the project managers that manage the project in estates and facilities. But at the end of the day, the council do charge what it costs us. So the costs that we've paid the contractor. So you would have to pay a proportion. If you're not happy with that, then ultimately leaseholders have a right to go to a leasehold valuation tribunal, and that is and then you would have to make application and explain why you thought the costs were unreasonable. Okay.
Okay, we have another message from Juliet Matthews. Is there any update on the proposed work on the Bermuda Road estate? Last I knew, work should have started in October.
Okay, thank you, Julia. I believe there is a updated newsletter going out to all Bermuda Terrace residents within the next week or so, because that is quite a major work, and I think they're doing 3 stages of consultation. So I think there is an updated newsletter going to all residents shortly. Okay, if I take everyone asking questions, Martin, I believe you're first. Thank you.
Hi there. Yes, well, a couple of questions. Just going back to the lease extension, do you have any anticipated costs if the new legislation comes into hopefully when the new legislation comes into effect? Do you have any? Do you have any idea how much the cost will be?
No, we have absolutely no idea at all. I mean, our costs are based on how much it costs our legal service to carry out the service. I mean, we're not a freeholder who's making profits out of this. So if they say our admin fees have to be less than they currently are, I'm not exactly sure where the money's going to come from. Presumably it'll have to come out of the premium that the council gets from having the lease extension. So I think a lot in this legislation is aimed at probably private freeholders who are probably charging an arm and a leg for administration work and for premiums. I'm not sure that it's intended for councils where we're not aiming to make a profit. We're literally just charging what it costs us to provide the service. But who knows, Martin? We really don't know at the moment. Did you say there was another question?
Well, yes, two more. One was to do with bike storage as well. This goes back to January 2018, so it's approaching nearly 7 years ago, which we've been waiting for bike storage. I think we had a meeting back in January on site with Will. Nothing's happened in almost 7 years for bike storage. Can anyone advise when we will ever get a bike store?
I can give you a quick update. The estates officer or the surveyor, Tony Huggins, he's left now, and Vishnu and I are taking over that programme. We've just done a procurement exercise that we've just evaluated this week for cycle stores, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to deliver them by April. So
April next 2025.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay. Thanks.
And one last question is, as I referred to earlier, I had a meeting on site with the building control officer yesterday regarding the balustrading works to the communal staircases. And I understand he has actually emailed the council, but I'll just read the one line. It says, following my visit today, I've internally informed Cambridge City Council that the balustrade works carried out at Fyson Road do not comply with the building regulations and that a regularisation application is required. So my question is, can you withhold invoicing leaseholders for non-compliant works, please?
Well, we'll have to speak to our Estates and Facilities Department about that. So we can only advise as to what we've been told has been completed, but
well, basically, if they don't comply with building regs, they're actually in a more dangerous state now than they were before the works were undertaken. And presumably that now invalidates part of the buildings insurance policy as well.
Okay, well, that's obviously new information that you're bringing to the meeting today. And obviously we'll take away and discuss with our Estates and Facilities team that procured the contract. So, but thank
you. Could I ask for a stop being put on that? Because we received an invoice requiring payment of £922 within 28 days. So based on this information, is it possible to put a stop on basically the direct debit claiming that money?
Please put that in writing to us. Only part of the cost might be for the handrails. So there might be other elements of the charge that are still chargeable, if you see what I mean, that related to redecoration works. So if you can just put that in writing to us so that we can work out what element of your charge relates to that work.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Who's next? Alex, I believe you're next.
Hi. I see from the meeting minutes from 2023 that EV charging was discussed. I think the answer was that the council is only using the connected curb scheme, which is kind of in a public space. So I live in North Cambridge, where there are lots and lots of shared car parks. So it's off-road parking, but in a shared car park. Is there any council policy on either allowing leaseholders to complete their own EV installation, or is there some kind of scheme running to run through all of the different shared car parks? Because as far as I know from walking around the area, most of them you're not able to actually run a cable from, a window or the side of your house to the car park, because that would cross over public land or footpaths or whatever. So there need to be a permanent solution installed.
No, I believe at the moment. Oh, sorry, Megan, did you have an update?
Yeah, we speak about this within estates and facilities a lot, and we do get quite a lot of requests from leaseholders to install EV chargers. At the moment, if the leaseholder owns the front garden, which is quite a lot of our flats do, so Grey Road, Fortescue Road, all the flats that look essentially like houses and own their front garden, they are given permission to install EV chargers. But unfortunately, flats where it's all communal areas and land around, at the moment it is a no. And the council is slowly but surely wanting to develop a policy on how to address this issue, as EV charging are likely to be the way forward, but it is unfortunately a no at the moment for leaseholders. I think I have an idea where you live, Alex. A quick search of where our leaseholders are, and it wouldn't be an option for you at the moment.
If you want to let me know, Megan, I can put it forward in one of the connected curb meetings I attend, because the private contractor is putting some EV chargers in our car parks. They pay for the works, but as a result, they get to set the tariff. But yeah.
I think some of this is kind of, I believe this is like the Minerva Way estate, what do you call it, Tweedmere, Legion, Abercorn Place, that kind of area. So I think
yes, correct.
It would need a little bit more, a bit more thought. So somewhere where they have big swathes of communal parking works well. I think we just need a little bit more thought in places like that, just because we'd have to also consult any freeholders in somewhere like Abercorn Place, because they would have a vehicular right of way over those parking areas at the back. So there would be potentially some consultation that we would need to do. And also there is an element of who would fund that work, because if Will can get somebody to do it, which is great, otherwise if we've got to fund the work, we can't charge leaseholders for that. So the money then comes from presumably the housing revenue account, which is questionable at the moment. I can't imagine many of our tenants have EV vehicles due to the cost, but obviously things will come down, so it will be a bit of a juggling act to work out what's right, what's fair, how to fund it if we can't get it funded, and a few stakeholders will need to be consulted as well.
Of course, and I'm not looking for it to be installed immediately, but
Yeah,
just for a plan to be put in place.
It's definitely on our radar with all sorts of even things sort of like air source heat pumps, air conditioning. We have a lot of leaseholders from all sorts of backgrounds, particularly European, and it's very common to have air conditioning, but for us we say no, unfortunately, to install it on the outside of our buildings for various reasons. But air source heat pumps are essentially the same, so we're having to really start thinking about it. And I think it's good to hear a bit of pressure from leaseholders, because we do need to think about it more. Unfortunately, in our remit in the home ownership team, we really do worry about leases and the admin and the service charging. So we are sometimes sort of limited by other departments as to what we can say about the management of our buildings. So that will be for them to come up with a good policy on how we can sort of allow these new fancy ways of heating our homes that are more energy efficient. It does need to be
and that's good to know as well, because I was also planning on making an application for an air source heat pump. So I'm assuming since they'll be refused.
Unfortunately, it is a no at the moment. Yeah, we won't allow them to be installed externally on our buildings.
Is there any way for any of us to get involved in lobbying for any of this policy change? As I work in an EV charging / solar / heat pump industry.
Oh, so you're like
I'm
really keen for it, I'm
fairly-
sure.
yes.
Yeah. I don't know, Diane, potentially, would you know about bringing in some thinking about policies? Where do we start? Who do we lobby, basically?
Yes. Or what department should I go through?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to residents and leaseholders lobbying for something, I would think initially it's something that Kate Grigg, the resident involvement and engagement manager, could perhaps advise on. She needs to be made aware that this is an issue that leaseholders in particular, and I expect probably some tenants, want to take forward.
Okay, thanks, Diane. I'll make sure that goes in the minutes, Alex. Thank you for your questions today.
Thank you very much.
Surinder, have you got a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah. I want to ask a question which is specific to my flat. I'm a leaseholder. I wonder if this is the right platform, or should I email rather than asking here?
It's probably best if you always email us leasehold.services@cambridge.gov.uk if it's specific regarding your property.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And then second question I have is on Drayton Road, the housing, the flats that are on leasehold or tenanted. There was a survey done 2 years ago for the amount of thermal insulation that should be put in the walls cavity or at the top of the roof. And when some surveyor came to my flat, they did this survey and they told me that the flat would require more insulation both in the walls and at the top of the roof. But since then, it has been past 2 years or 1.5 years, nothing has happened. I was wondering what will be done there if this can be.
Okay. Yeah, we can speak to our energy department and see if you're on a list. Maybe they've been out and done all of Drayton Road. I mean, there's so many issues with putting the correct cavity wall insulation in, so obviously it needs to be the freeholder that carries out the work, but we can certainly chase for you and find out what's happened since 2 years ago when you had your survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the other question by email.
Thank you. Marco, did you have a question?
Yes, it's about the new regulation for lease extension. I just extended my lease this year, so I spent what I had to spend, and I got 90 years extension. Now the new regulation says it's gonna be 990 years from next year. So I'm wondering what's gonna happen for people that just extended the lease with 900 years difference.
I don't.
The new
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering if the new regulation intended to include the last, I don't know, 2-3 years extensions, because it would be not fair for people that just extended 6 months before or 1 year before, getting 900-year different with new floods extensions.
I don't know. I mean, generally, when they bring in new legislation, they don't make it retrospective. So it would normally just be for people going forward. On the other hand, for yourself, obviously, if you was to sell your property, you would now have 180 years on your lease, or however many that you had at the time. So there's not going to ever be any issue regarding you selling the property, which is generally why people carry out a lease extension anyway. So you're going to have over 100 years on your lease now. So it's not going to affect the value. I mean, the value of the lease, or the, selling your property, only becomes an issue sub 80. So it doesn't really affect the value of it. Even if you had 82 years, it's still okay. So But
Right.
we'll
Okay.
have to wait and see what the legislation says. And obviously, if it is retrospective, then
Sure.
obviously we will update our records accordingly. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
I've got some more questions from the chat, Carol.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to answer this one. This is from Stan Wilson. Is there any update to the Barnwell phased redevelopment programme? Is it still on the programme?
Barnwell, I believe, is a major development project for the City Council because I think it includes flats, shops, houses, community centres, etc. But it's not anything that we are dealing with. It is being dealt with by the Greater Cambridge Partnership. And I think there is probably a Barnwell Road development webpage, probably if you searched it on Cambridge City Council. So, but I don't have any further details on that.
Yeah. So from Vajira, we have, is the Cockerell Road refurbishment work finished? I think the scaffolding's come down. I don't know, Will, Beaver, if you've been to Cockerell Road lately, if you've seen any, or Vishnu, if you've seen any activity. I was under the impression that if it's not finished, it should be just snagging now. But
yes, I think we're at the snagging stage now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's North City. Vishnu would know if he's still with us. So
Yes.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, scaffolding is down. From what I see. Yeah, I think it's in snagging stage. It will be done as soon as possible, hopefully.
Yeah. And I think Vishnu, you've been out and changing and sweeting all the locks and everything to make it a little bit easier for residents. So
oh yes, yes, I am.
Thank you for doing that.
No worries.
Yeah, so another question about Cockerell Road. Eric Osman, are you expecting the estimated cost of the Section 20 works at Cockerell Road to increase due to the extended period of time in that the scaffolding has been erected around the block? I can quickly answer this one, as we have always been given the impression that the council pays for the erection and the taking down of scaffolding. We don't pay for how long it's on site. I think otherwise we'd be bankrupt because we've got scaffolding all over the place, and sometimes things take longer, and also if the scaffolding companies were all told to take all of the scaffolding away overnight, they'd have nowhere probably to store it. So I think it's something that we've kind of negotiated, that we just pay for the up and the down, not the time that it's sat on site. And then continuing on, the freeholder had given Mullally the green light to replace rotten roofing timber around a month ago, which had been in progress. I'm not particularly aware of other issues at Cockerell Road that have come up recently, so we would need to refer to our Estate and Facilities Department on that one. Juliet Mackey just added something extra about EV charging, about if we stuck a load of these EV chargers in, would we need to worry about substations? And Alex Harris, who said that he's in this field, has responded that residential charging and application is made to the DNO, the organisation running the local grid, and they'll look at whether upgrades are needed. And he suspects that something probably might be required to. I know he suspects that it should be able to handle EV charging. And then Alex has also asked, can I check whether future meetings will be run annually or biannually? I saw from previous minutes that there was also a mid-year meeting in 2023.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yeah, we normally just have an annual meeting. I think in that particular year, I think there was a number of issues regarding planned works. I think there was a lot of leaseholders asking questions who'd had Section 20 notices in that year, and I think we had a specific meeting, and I think it was also coming out of COVID as well. I think we had a meeting where officers actually met on site, didn't we? So that was the main reason for the last one. But yeah, if a number of leaseholders request it, or if Diane indicates to us that she wants to have a meeting mid-year, then obviously we can always arrange that. The thing with planned maintenance, obviously, if you are having major work carried out, it is an issue for you. And if it's very expensive, we do try to have site-specific meetings like we have at Bermuda terrace to explain the reasons and try and get people, tenants and leaseholders, to understand the reason for the works. But it's not always helpful for our annual meeting to be completely taken over by people and the costs, because obviously we're not able to answer individual questions. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just one final comment from another leaseholder, Barlint. In a world where 40-degree heat waves are possible in Cambridge, that's fair. It was the hottest place in the UK a few years ago. I would like to implore the council to explore options to allow it. And I think air conditioning, because it can be used sort of both ways now, air conditioning, chilling and warming, I think that needs to be swept up with any kind of energy, heat pumps, EV chargers would need to be swept up under one policy. So yeah, we'll take that on board.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Stan, did you want to, is there anything you want to say to finish the meeting?
Having trouble getting off mute.
Oh,
Are you? Yeah, you're off mute.
Oh, yeah, having trouble. Yes, you're okay.
okay. Oh, jolly good. I would just like to thank everybody, because I think it's been an absolute marvellous meeting. I really am proud of it. Nothing more I can say about it really, but you know, to me, these meetings are very, very much welcome and are necessary. I can thank everybody for that.
Okay, thank you, Stan. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I'll stop recording now.
Okay.
And obviously the